America is in trouble. We've turned our backs on God, forsaken our history, and too easily succumb to tyrannical orders. Our problem seems overwhelming, but the solution is simple. It's time we return to the Lord in strict adherence to the Constitution of the United States.
Welcome to the Constitution Solution, one podcast under God. We're your hosts, Mark DeLuzio and Christy Tyrone. Now, let's get on with the show.
Hi, welcome to episode 11 of the Constitution Solution, one podcast under God. My name is Mark DeLuzio, and you, young lady, are?
Christy Tyrone.
Okay, I was just checking to make sure you remembered your name.
Today I got it for once.
We had a little technical difficulty earlier today, but we're in good shape now. And so anyway, good to see you, Christy. We're going to, this time around, do a presentation that I gave, that you asked me to give to one of your Christian conservative groups called Salt and Light. And I did that a couple of weeks ago up in Prescott Valley, and it was well received, I think. Yes. And I'm going to give that presentation again because I think it's something that is probably something that many of us don't realize what's going on with our U.S. government and this whole thing called globalism. All right. And I titled this The Communist Manifesto and Its Adoption by the U.S. Federal Government. And that sounds kind of like black helicopter conspiracy theorist, right? And
you bring your tinfoil hat? I got mine.
Yeah. And I think what happens is when you see what this presentation is all about, you'll get a different perspective if you're in doubt right now at all. All right. And as a matter of fact, if you remember the John Birch Society and Robert Welch way back in his late 50s, and he wrote the Blue Book. And if you read that Blue Book today, it was about how the communist movement is taking over our federal government. And I've reread that book over and over again. I've highlighted it, and I cannot find one thing that he was wrong about. Even though he got called all kinds of names. Of course, he got called a racist even back then. He got called anti-Semite. He was called a nut, a whack job. I mean, go down the list of all the names that you could possibly be called. And when I read the Blue Book and I go back and look at it, it's right in line with what we're going to talk about today. So I am going to share the presentation, and so people who watch it on YouTube can actually see the presentation. And if not, don't worry, you won't miss a thing if you're listening on Apple Podcast or any other medium, Spotify or whatever. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to blow up this presentation a bit. I hope this works. Okay.
Oh, look at that. There it is.
So yes, this is a picture of Karl Marx, if you guys are looking at this on YouTube. But anyway, the Communist Manifesto is something that was written way back when. We'll talk more about that. But again, I think a lot of what's going on today in America in our deviation from the Constitution and from God are, in fact, right in line with this new world order that the globalists are looking to create.
Yeah, it's the total opposite of everything that America's made of.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see America is the enemy, right? And, I'm going to start off, Christy, with a definition of communism. Okay. All right? Mm-hmm. A social, political, and economic ideology that seeks to establish a stateless, classless, and moneyless society where every individual is equal and there is no need for wealth accumulation or money, since the means of production, distribution, and exchange are all owned and controlled by the government.
Interesting how you could have stateless, moneyless, classless, yet still have a government.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, you have to have a government so they can control you. And basically what this is that they own everything. They all means of production, all capital, all wealth. Your wealth, personal property rights are gone, which, as we talked about, I believe in one of our earlier episodes, personal property rights is equivalent to freedom, according to the founding fathers, and that's spelled out in all kinds of different documents.
Well, and before we dig into the next parts of the slide, I just want to share with everybody that if you haven't read the Communist Manifesto, it's a really short little book, and I read it, I think it was about 5 years ago, and I just want to tell the story about how and why I read it. We had a friend over, and he's a younger guy, and he's college educated. He's awesome guy, totally good friend of ours. And we always just have really deep and meaningful conversations. And amidst one of those conversations, he's kind of started saying some things that were maybe kind of positive about communism. And I was like, whoa, what about this and that? And Sean and I started asking him all these questions, to kind of like, why do you like it? And what is it about it? And what do we do with this? And who's in charge? And is anybody voting? And blah, 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 all the questions. And then after that discussion, I went, home and I went and got the book and I read it. And I saw, which we'll get into as we go on, all the things that are in it and how destructive it is. And so I called him and I was like, man, I read the book. This is wild. What do you think about this and this chapter and that and that? And he was like, oh, I haven't read it. And his whole opinion and his positive outlook on this book just came from what his professor said in college. And I mean, that's just a perfect picture of how communism works its way in when how you can get convinced through it by the communist system to think that their ideas are great.
It's funny, I just was with a young lady who was going to the university of, well, I won't say where she's going, but I can't defame too many colleges because they're all doing it for the most part, almost all of them. But she was convinced that this was the way to go, communism, that our Constitution was outdated. It was written by a bunch of old white men who were slave owners. And I said to her, I said, you're just parroting what you've been told. You don't have an original thought on this. Okay. She's only, she's young and, 20, 21. You don't have an original thought on this. And by the way, the Constitution is not a suggestion. It's the law. Whether you like it or not matters not. It's our law. And without law, we don't have a society. And so, but she was fed a line. I didn't convince her, by the way, but she was fed a line of garbage from her professors. And it's just unbelievable when you take ignorance and arrogance and put them together.
Combo.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, part of what makes this any kind of positive argument for communism is, in reading the book, it was kind of fascinating to see that the initial problem that they're addressing is a legitimate problem that happens between people because we're fallen people and we, have greed and lust of power and all these issues we do have. So you can start reading and think, oh yeah, that's bad. And a professor can convince you that that's going on and that's not nice. But the solution is no solution at all. It's just further destruction and chaos and
well, I think you'll see too, Chrissy. We've been talking about this, you and I, offline too. It takes work to be a conservative.
Yeah,
it takes critical thought and really thinking through, because things aren't as obvious as some of these posters might make them, right? So just wanted to start with a definition here, Christy, of communism, so people kind of know that, hey, look, it's when the government owns everything, all means of production, and basically that's it. I mean, good luck climbing any kind of social ladder or financial ladder, because the ladders don't exist.
Yep, you're stuck in the pit.
Communism does not work without lies. And Vladimir Lenin, who is one of the key proponents and implementers of Marxism, had a quote that said, "A lie told often enough becomes the truth."
People just start believing it.
Okay, now, Christy, as we go through this, I want the listeners to think about today. I want them to think about, is anything that we're saying here, are there any parallels to what's going on today in our own U.S. government, either at the federal, at state, or at the local level. Okay. And just think about all of this. Think about some of the things that we've been told that have become gospel, whether it be climate change, believe in the science, the whole.
Pay their fair share.
Well, the pay your fair share actually was way back in the early 1900s when they put the income tax in. A lot of Americans wanted the income tax because they thought the government actually convinced Americans, I think we talked about this on a previous episode, that they were getting ripped off by the rich. And that is, by the way, a tenet of Marxism. All right.
Yeah,
And
you start
so,
to really see all the ways it's woven its way into so many different facets of our society.
yeah.
Oh, and by the way, this book came out in 1848. So that's about when these thoughts kind of hit the scene and have spread throughout the land since then.
Yeah. So, what are the tactics of communists? Now, does any of this sound familiar to you? And again, I challenge you to think about today. Violent revolution through class warfare. Propaganda that proletariats will rule the government. So in Marxism, and especially with Stalin, he had the working class called the proletariats and the bourgeoisie, the capitalists or the ruling class, basically anybody with any kind of wealth, even your middle class, okay? And the whole idea was pitting those two groups against each other, the ruling class, if you will, the capitalists versus the working class. And he thought, the propaganda of the working class needed to rule the government. Big psychological mistake he made there in that he thought that that group would be pure and uncorruptible, right? Which, is wrong too. How about destroying the family unit?
Oh,
mothers in the workforce. That. Yeah, mothers in the workforce and children in public schools, right? Free criminal.
Yeah, they want. Oh, sorry, I can go on about that. But that's okay. Yeah. That's a big part of it. When I was reading it, I was surprised to see that in destroying the family unit, they had the really big push for what we now know as, feminism, and getting the mothers out of the home was one of the driving force. They knew that if they could get mothers out of the home and into the workforce, one, they pay more taxes, and two, then the children are left alone and put into state-run schools where the children are free from their mother's care and protection, where they can just put whatever they want into their minds and make good little communists out of the children without parental guidance and protection. And it was when I was reading this too, is right before 2020, before the summer of love and the BLM riots. So watching all this play out at the time was like, whoa, it's happening. And with the family unit at that time, BLM had on their website that they were out to dismantle the nuclear family. It said it right there on their website, which they have since scrubbed because too many people caught on. But
Chrissy, you sound like a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, I got more than a hat now. I got more than the tinfoil hat. I got the whole ball gown now, right?
Well, let's move on with the list. Okay, so destroy the family unit, free criminals, and legalize theft from the rich. Right.
That's happening in California, big time.
$950. Well, now they're not even abiding that now. They just broke into was it Nordstrom's and stole thousands of dollars of high class, designer pocketbooks. I think it was Nordstrom's or one of those stores. Free criminals.
Well, they'll steal from individuals too. One of our friends in California, they broke into his shop and stole some of his dune buggies and crashed them, some guys. And the guy crashed, went to the hospital, so they knew who he was. And he did $40,000 worth of damage to this man's private property of his, self-run business, and zero payback, zero repercussions.
I can imagine one of those thieves got into an accident and then sue the store.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't do that.
Don't think it's that crazy, okay?
Right.
But freeing criminals is happening all the time, and we know what's going on. Again, go down this list and look at the parallels to what's going on today. Okay, the next one is an interesting one, and if you deny this one, then we can just shut the podcast off out there and just go and watch Saturday morning cartoons, because this one here, you can't deny this one. Abolish God, all religions and related organizations. And let's think about this. taking God out of the schools, taking God out of our courtrooms, taking crosses down on mountaintops that are honoring the men and women who've died for our country. If you think about, we closed we closed churches during COVID, but left Walmarts open. Okay, so and there's countless other, nativity scenes. You hear about that every Christmas for the last, I don't know how many decades I've heard about it. How we are attacking nativity scenes, and they're unconstitutional, and all this stuff, right? So, and the misnomer about separation of church and state, which is not in the Constitution, and we will be doing a podcast on that one, Christy, down the line. So this abolish God is a fundamental, along with the destroying the family unit.
Well, and because it's something that they cannot control, it's something they cannot touch. And as our founders often said, that the most important of private property is the sovereignty of thought. And then so if they can't, it's something they can't get their hands on, that's part of you they can never control. And so, and since they know they can't control it, they just try to talk you out of it. And that's where those lies come in. And if they can just convince you that there is no God, get you to kick God out of your own heart, then they don't have to worry about trying to take it from you, because they can't.
And what they want you to do is they want you to worship the government, not any other deity. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Economic control, nationalizing banks, industry, agriculture. Enter the Federal Reserve in what was it, 1913. Enter controlling money and what they want to do with digital currency. Okay. Christy, going back to what you said earlier, reconstruct education on the basis of scientific materialism, which basically means no higher authority or God can be taught, and you must worship the state. Okay, that goes right along with that earlier one. Exterminate the undesirables.
Not very nice.
Well, Margaret Sanger is a hero in the progressive movement. And as we know, Margaret Sanger with eugenics, and how Adolf Hitler used her theories to exterminate the Jews in World War II. Christy, I think you should probably someday do a separate episode just on Margaret Sanger and the whole eugenics in Planned Parenthood movement.
I would like to do that, because there's so much there that is little discussed, and very disgusting.
Yeah, it sure is. Confiscate guns. That's not going on today, is it? That they want to take our guns away, right?
Yeah, they want you to be able to protect yourself, so then they can once again control you. It's all about control. And what's interesting too, because during 2020, during the summer of love, when all the riots were happening, the gun sales were like through the roof, right? Like people were buying guns all over the place, especially in the big cities. And you saw that a lot of people who were previously anti-gun or pro-gun control, all of a sudden were like, I want to buy a gun. And they were like, okay, you got to do your background check, and you got to wait your 10 days and all the stuff. They're like, it's so hard to buy a gun. It's like, yeah, this is what you've done to us.
Every year up in Vegas, there's the SHOT Show, which is the biggest gun show in the country, up in Las Vegas. In one year, they had when Obama was president, they had a huge banner when you walked in to this huge conference center. And it had a picture of Obama, and it said, congratulations to the nation's #1 gun salesman. Okay. And you can't, I mean, and I think Biden probably outweighed him, because you had not only COVID, you had Biden, and you had Black Lives Matter. So you had all that going on at the same time. Last two here is control the media. That's not going on, right? And yeah, and censor and eliminate free speech, freedom of expression and assembly. So I'm a personal example of this, where I got banned on LinkedIn for life.
You were linked out. Remember you said that?
I was linked out. I had thousands and thousands of global followers in my industry. I'm kind of a little bit of a rock star. And they went back when I was running for Congress, Christy, in June of last year. back into 7 months earlier in the previous year and found something I wrote. And I wrote, the COVID vaccine is not a vaccine. And they said, misinformation, we're banning you from LinkedIn, you're gone. Okay. And by the way, it's not a vaccine. The CDC changed the definition, but facts don't matter, right? But they will silence you, and so many have been silenced. My friend Kevin Jackson, who got banned off of Fox News and also got banned from Facebook, he had millions of followers. Okay, and this is what's going on now. People say, well, what about your First Amendment rights? Well, if the government's not silencing you, it's not a Facebook or a LinkedIn can do this. However, if they're doing it at the behest of the government, it is a First Amendment violation. Okay, and there's a lot more to that freedom of speech thing. Again, that we'll be talking about at future episodes. So, does
But
any
since
of
this whole the whole thing relies on lies, all of communism is built on lies. So the last thing they want you to do is speak the truth.
Well, there you go. Okay, and world leaders, if you look at the world leaders, they would all agree that communism is good. They agree with some of these college students. You know, you look at Hitler, you look at Pol Pot, you look at Mao Zedong, you look at Putin, Stalin, Lenin, Castro. I mean, go down the list, right? Now, there may be 100 to 200 million people that would disagree with the fact that communism is good. Although we can't get their opinion because they're not here to talk to.
Yep.
It's estimated between 100 and 2 million people died at the behest of communism. They still don't know the numbers, okay? And it might even be higher, who knows? But so communism has killed more people. And this will tie back into the globalist thought later when I talk about, is communism a useful idiot for a globalist? And we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Now, there are 10 planks, Christy, that we talked about when we did this together. You and I put this together in up in Prescott Valley, and I'm just going to read the 10 planks. Number 1, abortion of property and land and rents. 2, a heavy or graduated income tax. Oh, we're not doing that. Abolition of inheritance rights. There are states that tax inheritance. I think there's 6. Confiscation, number 4, confiscation of property of all immigrants and rebels. 5, nationalization of banking and credit. 6, centralization of means of communication and transport. 7, factories and means of production owned by the state. 8, industrial armies and equal liability for all labor. 9, abolish distinction between town and country. They don't want local and town governments. Okay. 10, free education, combine education and industrial production. That's your controlling of that. Now I'm going to talk about 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm talking about half of these, 5 of these right now. I'm going to go to all of them right now. But the Communist Manifesto was written by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in 1848. Okay.
And I saw when I was doing a little research for this episode, I saw that Friedrich Engels at one point, somebody asked him a question about who's your least favorite person, and his answer was Charles Spurgeon, who's like the well-known, pastor of our time and of that time. And so that was just really went to show how much they hated Christianity and the Christian faith, and were specifically out to wage war with the Christians.
Yeah, well, not a fan, were they?
Mm-mm.
So those are the 10 planks. Okay. Now let's just talk about plank number 1: abolition of all property and land and application of all rents of land to the public. Now, let's talk about, why don't we do a tag team on this, Christy? We got a government example and a biblical conflict. Okay. The government example, just some of the examples of what our federal government is doing. The Waters of the United States Act. All these are unconstitutional, by the way. Antiquities Act of 1906. They're using that to confiscate land by declaring a location, either historical or for scientific reasons. Biden has a 30 by 30 initiative that says the federal government will own 30% of all of our land by 2030. And he just did it now up in the Grand Canyon, where using the Antiquities Act declared the site up there a scientific uh, property, and closed off part of the Grand Canyon because of uranium. He also used it using it in cattle herding, where because of flatulence coming from cattle, he is using the Antiquities Act to confiscate land from cattle ranchers. I mean, if that's and I'm like, where is Congress on this in writing laws and articles of impeachment to prohibit this? This is a pure violation of an abuse of the law.
Do
The
you remember
EPA. Yep.
the Bundy Ranch situation that happened?
Yes.
That was like, I can't remember all the details. We should do a whole episode on that one day. Sean has followed that really closely, and I'm like,
Yeah,
that was talk about taking your private property.
there are so many. Yeah, there are so many things like that, Christy. The EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, which the mandates they have in terms of grabbing land and not allowing you to build on your own land because of the salamander or whatever they're trying to protect today. The EPA is a totally unconstitutional agency. So is the CDC. They had COVID rent restrictions. You couldn't evict somebody during COVID. Your own property, if you're a landlord, you couldn't evict anybody if they didn't pay the rent. Well, guess what they did? They didn't pay the rent. And guess what happened? The landlord couldn't pay his mortgage and he lost his house. Okay. Biden's 30 by 30, I talked about local taxation penalties, zoning regulations, and there's a million more that fall into this category. These are only some of the examples. Now, the biblical conflicts, Christy, there's many, okay, but we have a couple on this slide.
Yeah, we have just here the basics in the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not steal, and thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods, which if you could steal it, that means someone else owns it, right? So therefore, honoring private property. And there's all kinds of stories in the Bible about, God's people attaining the land and how to pass down their inheritances and whatnot. So it's very important to have that and to protect that. And that's definitely a tenet of, Christianity in the Bible. And that's something our founding fathers built upon with our founding documents and the way our government is structured to protect that. And here we are with all those things that you just listed going on that oppose this.
Christy, I got pushback on this on this presentation, saying that the Constitution doesn't mention God but once, not once, right? And that was by design. That was by design because the founders did not want. They wanted the people to be in charge, no deity and no government, right? And that was by design. However, if you look at the founding papers, the Federalist Papers, you look at the Declaration of Independence, we were founded on a Christian basis, right? And I think we said 95% back then of our population was Christian. Now, of course, now we're probably around 62, 63%, and we have other faiths, okay? But overall, though, our country was founded on the basis of morality and God, and just because God is not mentioned in the Constitution does not mean the framework was centered upon that, right?
Well, the Bible was the number one resource in building the Constitution.
Yeah,
it was used 4 times more than any other backing source they used. So that was definitely the top dog in building the stuff. And then, but they also didn't want to be ruled over by a state religious king, because that's kind of what they just escaped. But however,
exactly.
the states had a lot more of that religious intertwining with their governments going on, but the feds weren't trying to get involved in all of that. But
No,
yet everything
right.
that's structured is Bible based.
You're right, and they wanted to avoid what you just said and what they fought against from England, right? So Anyway, again, this is why this type of thing requires critical, deep thinking, and it requires some work. Not just look at, hey, I don't see God in the Constitution. That means it's not based on the Constitution.
Hey, where all
That's
those ideas come from? Think a little deeper, and you'll find God in all of it.
my God. That's a intellectually lazy,
Yeah.
low resolution effort you'd put in if that's what you concluded just by not seeing the word God in the Constitution. So okay, so that's plank number one. Plank number two: a heavy or progressive income tax. The 16th Amendment came in 1913, unfortunately, and gave Congress the power to tax our income. Now, people still say this is unconstitutional, so for the simple reason that there is another amendment, which is a violation, not an amendment, but violation of Article 1, Section 8, that says the taxation of the people needs to be in proportion to the population. The 16th Amendment is not, because they are taxing you based on your income, not on the population and the needs of each state. Okay. So we have a very heavy tax. Now we have FICA, which includes Social Security and Medicare, which, if you really go back to the Constitution, this may not sound good if you're a politician, it's an unconstitutional tax, and the whole program's unconstitutional. Okay. So now we have graduated rates up to 37%. They were higher before. And at one time they were up to, I think, 90% at one point when Reagan was president. But we have a graduated progressive income tax, and that, coupled with the whole Federal Reserve, which we'll talk about, just allows an open checkbook for Congress to spend money and continue to ruin us economically. Now, in the biblical conflict, Christy?
Here we have from Luke 3:12 and 13, collect no more than what you've been ordered to do. So I believe this is where John the Baptist is baptizing all the new guys that are interested. And after they get baptized, they're like, what are we going to do now? How do we do this? And when he told the tax collectors was collect no more than what you've been ordered to do. So it's obviously the tax is there. Nobody liked the tax collector. Everybody kind of knew that, but it's your job. And so just be fair and be reasonable in that. And there's all kinds of other stories in the Bible about taxes too. Like back in I believe it's in Kings, when King Solomon's son takes reign, and he's Rehoboam. I can't say his name. And, you read something to yourself and you have it figured out, and then you have to say it, and you're like, wait a minute, I don't know how to say that. But he's new on the scene, and the people are like, hey, you're taxing us too much, we don't like it. And then his older council, they're like, hey, you should maybe lower the tax and go easier on the people. But then the younger guys at his council, they were like, no, tax them more. They should probably pay their fair share, And so we ended up taxing them more. And then that's when the tribes split up. And I think it was the other 10 left and become then the house of Israel. And then you have Judah and Benjamin stayed behind and endured the taxes. But so like even in the Bible with the tribes, you have a split over tax disputes. So it's always been a thing.
If I recall, though, Solomon only wanted to tax people 10%, and it's like, hey, let's put him in. Let's put him in as king.
Yeah, they're taking way more than that now.
He wasn't that greedy. Well, again, I think the tax collectors in the Bible got all a bad rap simply because they abused their power. That's not going on now. The government's not abusing their power by violating our Constitution and overtaxing us. Even at the
that's the
state
thing.
level.
Like, I think we all kind of know like taxes are going to be a thing, and in America we do vote for them, on how much and on what and where it's supposed to go, but it shouldn't be so much.
Well, look,
it's kind of wild.
We will do this, of course, down the line. We're going to talk about the federal budget and how some at least 50, if not more percent of our budget is unconstitutional. Okay, from a federal perspective, which means our taxes are that much higher too, right? So, okay, so progressive income tax. Geez, that's happening today. Plank number 2 of the Communist Manifesto. Abolition of all rights of inheritance. There are 6 states that levy inheritance taxes right now. 13 states levy estate taxes. All these states are Democratic run. Okay. Estate taxes range from 18 to 40% over $13 million of assets. Now, my son Stephen had a fiance, Lisa, who uh, you know, uh, when my son was killed, he left her, his insurance and all that. But her father runs this nice, beautiful farm. I don't know what it's worth, but let's just say it's a lot of land, and let's say the land is worth I don't know, maybe $10 million. I have no idea what it's worth, but it could be up that high. And she, when he, if he passes the land on to her, she has no liquid assets to pay the estate tax on it. So she'll have to sell the land, collect the money, pay the estate tax, and move on. She won't be able to keep that farm in her family because of the estate tax that Connecticut the federal government has as well. So again, confiscation. This is all about confiscation of your property, including heavy taxation on your income. That's your property. Okay. So
Which that's wild too, because a friend of ours pointed that out because he lives up the street here and he bought the land, a barren lot. And over the years, he's, added, he did the septic and brought power in. Eventually they built the house and, lived in a little trailer the whole time till their house is built. Big, big, beautiful house now. But now his property tax went up. So it's like because of his labor, because he poured his life savings into this property, now they get more money just because,
how death, by the way, is a taxable event is beyond me. But
yeah.
anyway, hey, look, with the climate change, the progressives have learned how to tax air. So I guess if they could do that, they could tax death, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, but the biblical conflict on this, and there's many, but again, we just have one listed here.
So from Proverbs 13:22, a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Of course, you want to inherit to them your wisdom and love of the Lord, first of all. But when you build and make something for yourself, it's nice to be able to pass it on to your kids and then they can build on it. And that's one of the things that made America so appealing to the rest of the world and why so many people have immigrated here since we've begun our nation is because that idea that you can make something out of nothing and build
Right.
something to pass down to your children.
Mhm.
One of my friends lives in California in a surprisingly conservative pocket there. But yeah, her grandfather did just that. And he bought 3 properties in their little town and developed them, built little houses on them. And now he's passed them down to his daughters, and then they've been able to pass them on to their kids. And so my friend and her sons are now, living in one of the houses. And I'm like, that's so cool. That's the American dream, So like they have something to pass on from generation to generation where they have a home, they have something secure to hold on to and to build on. And that's that's really hard to do nowadays. I think we
It's
talked
going to be
a
a
lot
lot.
about
It's
that.
going to be a lot harder. And again, there's a
Mhm.
biblical conflict here in what the government's doing. Surprise, surprise, right?
Mhm.
Plank 5, centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Okay, we've done or we're going to do a whole thing on the Federal Reserve. That was enacted in 1913. And the elimination of the gold standard by Richard Nixon. I think in a previous podcast, I said it was Gerald Ford. It's actually Nixon that nixed it, but the degradation of the gold standard was happening with previous presidents too. All took roles in different fashions in terms of getting this out. And without the gold standard, we can expand the money supply by printing money, because the gold standard, of course, was just a standard that said, hey, we can't have more money in circulation as a government higher than our gold reserves. All right. Once the gold standard was taken off, that gave the Federal Reserve an open checkbook to start printing money. So if you're starting to wonder why in the 70s, for those of you who are around, why things were so much cheaper than they are today, it's because of that very reason. The gold standard went away. We expended the money supply, which is the definition of inflation, which then devalued the currency, which is why your groceries go up in the stores because of inflation. So think about what a loaf of bread cost back in 1975, for example, versus what it costs now. All right. It's not because wheat became more expensive, it's because our money became less valuable. All right. And that's what happened. So With the move now of a digital currency and controlling our money supply in that regard, the government can do all kinds of crazy things like they're doing in China with social credit scores and all that, where they can actually bribe you or coerce you for either spending money or saving money based on their whim. Okay. So anyway, and of course, taking money and using it for unconstitutional purposes, like the tuition reimbursement program that Biden wanted to do and still may try to do despite the Supreme Court ruling. Anyway, there's all kinds of abuses going on in this regard. So, Christy.
For the biblical conflict, we have Romans 4:4, wages like debt owed must be paid. There's once again a lot of spiritual stuff going on there. Sin is death and life is forever eternal in Christ Jesus. But we have just in your daily life too. In Habakkuk, there's a quote about when you owe money, or a verse about when you owe, your debtors will collect. You'll become plunder to your debtors. Like you don't want to owe. You do not want to owe to these people, and so many people nowadays are in this debt and debt of these people, and then they own you. And when it's just this big conglomerate monopoly now, it's not like you just owe your neighbor or just owe your bank. It's you are in deep and you're helping really in a lot of ways to fund your own destruction. And they just reach so far into everything that it's gotten so out of control.
Well, I think you said it in the previous podcast. If the federal government takes from one and gives to another, they own and control both. Okay. And that's exactly what they want. And that's why it was unconstitutional. And the general welfare clause in the Constitution gets misinterpreted all the time, even by the Supreme Court. But the general welfare clause is not because for charity. And I think we did talk about that in a previous episode. So again, all this kind of ties together, doesn't it, Christy?
Yeah, then you plank 10. We have one more. Ooh, that's my favorite.
Yeah, one more plank. We're going to do plank 10. I should let you take this one. I mean, free education for all children in public schools. By the way, I won't tell who it was, but they said, "Hey, our education is free here. Our public school education is free." Are you kidding me? Some of the towns you look at the towns and the budgets for education, they're funded by taxes. There's no such thing as free education. But anyway, the plank says free education for all children in public schools, abolition of children's factory labor in its present form, combination of education and industrial production. Okay. And again, taking out God from the school and what they call teaching scientific, which basically means just what you need to make the state run. Okay. And nothing more, nothing else. And in the government examples, we now have the Federal Department of Education, originally started by Andrew Johnson in 1867. He signed the legislation, but really was enacted officially by a cabinet position in 1979 by Jimmy Carter. And it's a formal agency. There is nothing in the Constitution, and we talked about this earlier with enumerated powers, that in what we call the three-letter agencies that allow the federal government to have a say in our education at all. That is supposed to be per the states, per the 10th Amendment, right? That if it's not enumerated in the Constitution, it's left to the states or to the people. And no.
And there was, though, in the beginning, a sentiment of wanting the children of the nation to be educated as to understanding the heart of our founding of our country, obviously to be closer to God and educated in the Bible. None of it was like forcing it down their throats, but there was an overall talking, like Benjamin Rush, one of our founders, he was very into seeing that happen. Noah Webster, my buddy, he was all about that. I think Thomas Jefferson was really into like getting more lessons on the Bible into the schools. But none of these things weren't like forced through federal government. It was just the idea that these people had where they were like, this is so important, because they knew that the importance of keeping this nation alive came along with an understanding of the Bible and God's laws and ordinances.
Yeah, I think they also knew, Christy, that they couldn't trust the government to control education at the federal level, because you have very little power at the local level to control it, right? And that's happening now, right? With all
Yeah,
the
and then what we had happen in and I want to do more research on this, so I won't go too deep into it, plus for the sake of time. But it was in the mid 1800s when Horace Mann comes on the scene, and he was very involved in local politics in Massachusetts, and he ended up starting the first publicly funded, taxpayer funded schools that were secular, that word. And he was a humanist, and he actually wanted to get God out of all of the education, because he knew that faith, just like the communists, faith was the antithesis of their little humanist movement. And so in order to get their message passed, they had to get God out of the hearts of the people. And the best way to do that was through the children. So, and it's when you showed us here that Andrew Johnson signed that legislation in 1867, that was like, oh, I needed, there's probably some connections there that started happening
sure.
right around that time.
And the biblical conflict on this one we found was what?
We have Proverbs 1:8. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching. There's so much in the Bible about this. We're reading Deuteronomy right now in our Wednesday night Bible studies, and there's just so many comments about teaching God's law to your children and ingraining it on their hearts. And when you're walking down the path, and before you lie down at night and when you wake up in the morning. And so it's a parent's duty to teach their children. That's where education starts. And since we've been convinced by these communists through all their lies to put them in these
Right.
public education systems, we've really just signed them off to the state and outsourced our number one responsibility.
Called control. It's called
Yes.
control. Hey, Christy, we only did 5 of the 10 planks, so maybe on another podcast we'll do the other 5, right? We did that out of brevity because there's a lot here, right? And we could talk forever about all of these, but if you go back now, and I'm showing a slide for you that are not watching on YouTube, a globalist organizations for what we call a one world government. And I'm going to read them really quick. We got an International Criminal Court. By the way, Ruth Bader Ginsburg once said, we need to interpret the Constitution based on international law. She should have been impeached for that.
Yeah.
International Business Council, United Nations, European Union, International Forum on Globalization, World Trade Organization, World Social Forum, Global Citizens Movement, International Workmen's Association, Paris Climate Agreement, Conference on Disarmament, Armament. Can you imagine that one? That one there in relation to our Second Amendment? Now, the next 4 I'm going to talk about are what I consider probably the most deadliest. And there's, by the way, there's tens and scores more of these type of organizations out there. But here they are: World Health Organization, International Money Fund, World Economic Forum, and the Council on Foreign Relations. Those 4 are deadly. And if you're looking at the slide, I got them circled in a red circle to show how deadly they are. Now let's talk about this World Economic Forum. Our friend Klaus, Chrissy's screaming at the screen. If
I
you
know, anyone that can't see, it's a picture of Klaus Schwab, and I booed him. That's my raw reaction.
well, let's listen to what he said at his last conference. The World Economic Forum is releasing a new Davos Manifesto. Davos is where they hold their conference. A Davos Manifesto. Manifesto. Think about that. Interesting choice of words. Which states that companies should pay their fair share of taxes, so show zero tolerance for corruption. Isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? Show zero tolerance for corruption, uphold human rights throughout their global supply chains, and advocate for a competitive level playing field. Now, all that sounds so agreeable until you really find out what this Davos Manifesto really means. Okay. This clown thinks he's smarter than you, and along with all his merry men and women that join him every year at this WEF, World Economic Forum, and they want to be able to control you and basically have a one world government. That's what they're all about. Now, let's just talk about notable quotes. They're not even hiding these quotes, and I'm going to read them real quick, okay, that were said at the World Economic Forum at various times. Schwab said, China is a role model for other nations. How's that grab you? Schwab also said ESG scores are necessary for stakeholder capitalism. He called stakeholder capitalism. Uh, environmental social governance scores, ESG. They idolize Greta Thunberg and has reminded us that adherence to the current economic system represents a betrayal of future generations. That's
Okay,
Schwab again. Okay. A 13-year-old they idolized. Okay.
Yeah.
A guy named Mark Beneff says capitalism as we know it is dead. Our buddy Schwab again says business leaders must uphold their duty to society and move beyond their legal obligations. Angela Merkel, capitalist extraordinaire. I should say communist extraordinaire. The whole way we do business will have to change. Neil Ferguson, capitalism is the worst of all economic systems. Dambisa Mayo, it's a government's responsibility first and foremost to create an environment where corporations will behave. According to who?
Yeah.
Who's going to set those rules? Okay. John, my favorite little I keep calling him capitalist. My favorite little communist, John Kerry. When you start to think about it, it's pretty extraordinary that we, a select group of human beings, are able to sit in a room and actually talk about saving the planet. I mean, these guys are so brilliant. And if you don't believe me, ask John Kerry how brilliant he thinks he and others are in that group. It's unbelievable.
They fly in on their private jets to talk about saving the planet.
Save the planet. Yeah, exactly. John Kerry also said, "So how do we get there?" This is the last one that they just did this year. This is a true quote. Now, I'm not making this up. John Kerry said, "So how do we get there? It's money, 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 money." End of quote. Let's see. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He said money 7 times. Okay. Now,
Not trying to hide it.
if you know how, and Al Gore is sitting right there applauding him. And Al Gore was, you know, uh, how did a public servant make the kind of money he made? Okay. Now, it's Thermopylae, it's Agincourt, it's Dunkirk. This is the Battle of the Bulge. This is 9/11. Al Gore says, comparing climate change to all these tragic events. Okay. And by the way, climate change is, as we talked about, Christy, a method of controlling and sucking up money from our governments to and when Trump pulled out of the Paris Accords, I was like, wow, what a move. Phenomenal. He pulled out of the WHO, the World Health Organization. I think if he had been elected president, he would have pulled out of the United Nations, which, and rightfully so. He put pressure on Angela Merkel for, that Germany doesn't have an army, a standing army.
Oh.
They have an army, but it's a titular army. They're not a fighting force. Germany, okay? Angela Merkel put all of her money into social programs and allowed all kinds of illegal immigrants into her country. They do not have a fighting army in Germany.
So unsustainable, okay? These
plans. Yeah, no, that's true. And Trump put pressure. Say he's supposed to put 2% of GDP into your military if you're going to be a NATO player, and most of those countries were not doing that, especially her. Okay. Now, if you ever doubted the mainstream media's collusion with the globalist agenda, hopefully this will change your mind. And what I'm showing on the screen is the person of the year. Let's go through it. You got Obama.
Time Magazine, person of the year.
Time Magazine, I'm sorry. Putin, Hitler, Bernie Sanders, Al Gore, Angela Merkel, and of course, our favorite, Greta Thunberg. Okay. So
great people all around.
Phenomenal. Yeah. Okay. And by the way, this is just a sample, Chrissy, because I didn't have enough room on my screen to show the others. Yeah. Okay. And if you don't think this is real, Let's look at some of our presidents. Like, for example, George Herbert Walker Bush wrote a article on the New World Order. To the National Security Strategy of the United States, he wrote a preface called The New World Order. All right.
So anybody
Um,
that thinks the Republicans are the good guys, watch out.
our buddy Joseph Biden wrote How I Learned to Love the New World Order. Okay. H.G. Wells talked about the New World Order way back when and warned us about it, right? Although, H.G. Wells was a socialist. Um, and of course, Castro demands a new world order. And this is just some of the people that have done this. Now, the Council on Foreign Relations, if you go on and look who's into that organization, it will blow your mind as to who's in there. Okay.
And once again, the whole biblical conflict is, if anybody remembers the story of the Tower of Babel, when everybody got together and all the nations came together and they were going to build the tower to heaven and they were going to be more powerful than God. And God tore the tower down and separated everybody and sent them each their own ways, showing that God likes small government. He doesn't, it's nothing but trouble when everybody gets together like this and tries to be the most powerful.
Yeah, how did that work out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's some questions, Christy, I think we've asked people to ask themselves, right?
Okay.
Do you see similarities between the globalist movement, the Communist Manifesto, and what the federal government of the United States of America is pulling off on us today? Okay. I see direct parallels. Do you think our elected officials are knowledgeable about what's going on in this area?
No.
I
Hard
think
no.
some. I think some are, but I think some. Well, I think some are being played, right?
Yeah. Some of them are being played for sure. You have a mix probably of uninformed and, I mean, I see that here locally, a mix of uninformed and then a mix of people that are just like bought and paid for and doing what,
Yeah, spending most of the time on Anheuser-Busch beer issues and things that are just distractions from what's really going on. Which elected officials are part of this scheme? Okay, and I say trust nobody. All right, number one.
Yeah.
But again, I think you heard me say it on the campaign trail when somebody was saying to me, "Mark, how can we trust you?" I said, "Why the heck would you trust me me being a politician? I don't want you to trust me. I want you to hold me accountable." Okay. And if I don't do what I say I'm going to do, kick my butt out of office in 2 years. But don't trust a politician. Why do we do that? Why do we trust these guys? We got to hold them accountable, right?
You see every election cycle, oh, it's the most important and we're all going to die if we don't get these people in. And it's like, why? They're going to save your day? Like, no, we need to be a part of, we need to
It's the
actively be a
most
part
important
of
election of our lifetime. And it's, oh yeah, if we don't give, I just got one the other day from a congressman here in Arizona. If we don't give today, it's over, right? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I always say. Yeah, it's over.
Do you think the vicious attacks and hoaxes, as with the Russian collusion hoax, the hoax of climate change, the vicious attacks on our president, as well as the impeachment attempts against President Trump, are a result of his anti-globalist agenda? If you think about it, he was against the military-industrial complex. He was against the United Nations. He called foul on NATO. He called foul on the Paris Accords. He called foul on the WHO, the World Health Organization, and so forth and so on, right? Do you think those attacks are generated from that? I happen to think they are. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think those who support socialism and communism are useful idiots for the globalists? I thought a lot about this, right? I mean, a communist state, let's say it's Cuba, let's say it's China, let's say it's Russia. Well, they all have their own organizations, and that's not a one world government, is it? So you got to think maybe the communists themselves are useful idiots for the Schwabs of the world and these globalists that are using communism, like communism are using college students, because you remember socialism is just an entree into communism, right? So there's a bunch of useful idiots all along the line
Yeah, and I
look at
think
what's
that's
going on.
why I answered that hard no earlier about our elected officials being knowledgeable, because like I said, there probably a lot of them are in on it and maybe know what's going on, but I don't know how many of them actually like even know what this leads to, you know?
Yep.
It's like, or they think that they're maybe going to get maybe a higher seat at the end of the game or something, but
Hey, look,
very
as Christy, you and I know, we talked about this when we were together. There are winners in communism. It's just not going to be you.
not going to
Okay.
be you.
That's what I say to people. There's winners, but not you. So, last question is, how do you think we should combat this? Now, Christy and I put together a a list of things that we can think about. Um, First, we need to educate the public, especially the youth of our nation, on our Constitution and on our God. And that's exactly why Christy and I are doing this podcast. Okay. And that's, there needs to be more, obviously. It's not just this podcast, but we need to educate the youth. My grandson, by the way, who'll be 14 in November, has listened to our first episodes that we published. And he sent me a text the other day. Poppy, I really love your podcast. I'm learning so much. Nice job. Keep up the good work.
Great.
So,
There's hope yet, right?
well, yeah, he's a real smart kid. Um, Educate our elected officials and remove those from office who are culpable.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are some here. By the way, on both sides of the aisle. All right.
Yeah.
And some of our political parties, our GOPs at the state, maybe local levels, county levels, uh, are corruptible to a degree, and in some cases are falling prey to the tactics of this whole movement, in my opinion. Right.
A lot of that comes in the form of tolerance and not wanting to be called names.
Yeah. Well, making change does not come without pain and risk, right?
Yeah.
As we know, our founding fathers risked an awful lot, including their lives, and we are going to do a whole podcast on that. Exit our membership in the United Nations and all these other globalist organizations. Abolish the Federal Reserve. I don't hear anybody in Congress talking about that. They are the bane of all of our economic problems. Of course, spending like drunken sailors too, but the Federal Reserve was culpable in the Depression, pioneered by Roosevelt, but culpable in the Depression. And if you look back over all the different economic calamities we had over the years, the Federal Reserve is right there. Now, what they're doing today is they printed money like drunken sailors, expanded the money supply, which created inflation. That is inflation. And then they said, okay, well, now we have to raise interest rates to quell inflation. I said, wait a minute, you caused inflation. Okay. And now, mortgage rates are over 7%. It just took a whole uh, class of people out of the home market, which is the American dream, and that's gone. And you don't think that's by design? I'm sorry, you got to go a long way to convince me it's not. You mean to tell me, as dumb as we think Biden and some of these other people are, that they don't know the definition of inflation and what expanding the money supply is going to do to this country? You mean to tell me they're not stupid people? Okay.
No.
Well, maybe Biden is, but
A
they're
little
not
puppet.
stupid
Just a
people. They know
puppet
what
here
they're
and there. Yeah.
Christy, they know what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Evolve back to a precious metal type monetary policy like the gold standard. Okay. So we can control our money supply and not let it grow. States' nullification of unconstitutional mandates, regulations, and laws, and we have a podcast on that.
Yeah.
The nullification effort. I think that one's getting released today, if I'm not mistaken. Abolish unconstitutional agencies. We have a whole episode on that. All these unconstitutional agencies is where you and I are losing our freedoms. And finally, prayer to be brought back, and God, of course, into all aspects of society. Okay. And
that's the number one, is getting God back into everybody's hearts and lives. And
but the way I did it, though, I saved the best for last.
no, because that's the most important piece. Like all this other stuff, by nature of some kind of great revival that we got to work towards here, is how and when all these other things start playing out for the better, when the hearts change for God, back to God.
So, Christy, I started out by saying communism does not work without lies. And this slide here crossed out the word communism and put in globalism does not work without lies. Okay. And the question to ask, are socialists the useful idiots of communists? And are communists the useful idiots of globalists? Right? Let's think about that as
Yep.
we go through. So, final thoughts. The faith of Christians and those who believe in Christianity, you've got the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit as our Trinity. Well, the faith of globalists, it looks like this: the Antichrist, the
Nope.
Antichrist, Satan, and false prophets. Okay, that is the Trinity, if you will, of globalists. So Christy, that's the end of this. But I think you and I both know that it's going to be a long fight, and the fight will continue after we're probably gone. And hopefully, we can leave a better world for our grandkids. But our country
Yeah.
is in a perilous position, in my opinion, today, with what's going on and what our own government is doing exactly what the founders try to prevent with the checks and balances. Because if you think about it, the checks and balances in our Constitution is the one thing that makes our Constitution in our country so different than everybody else. And we are now we have now blown past the checks and balances by this fourth branch of government, which is now controlled by the executive branch, which means that they write law through regulations, and we are losing it in all different aspects of what the framers originally established. And so
Yeah. And
that's
and
concerning.
it seems hopeless when you really start looking at all those details. Um, but it's not, the solution is plain, it's simple. It's not going to be easy to achieve, but we know what needs to be done. And like I said, getting back to God is the first thing, understanding the structure of this, because we're going to be governed. So understanding the best way to do that and raising better people, better children, teaching them as we should, educating them on these eternal truths so that they can maybe grow up to we have to start the fight so that they can take it on and continue it and hopefully eventually turn things around. That's the cycle of humanity. That's how it always goes. And so we're on the downward plummet right now, but we just have to keep working toward the
I
turnaround.
I have hope. I hope I have faith in our country. And in some regards, I think I think Jefferson said that freedom always has to be refreshed with the blood of patriots. And if you think about what Madison said, if men were angels, and we said this before, if men were angels, we wouldn't need a government. Okay, and without morality, our country doesn't work. And right now, the
Yeah.
people running it are not moral people in so many
Yeah.
different regards. And that has to change, right? So hopefully we'll be able to do that.
I think that little by little, people are starting to see that. Maybe they're not quite sure what to do about that. Um, but there's a lot of things to be hopeful about. More people are aware, which is the start. More people are starting to homeschool their kids because they're realizing our school systems are garbage. Homeschool numbers, I believe, have doubled since 2020, and that's on the rise. And you have more people kind of getting involved in local politics.
Right.
For a while there, people were returning to church in pretty big numbers. I'm not sure how that's playing out now, but little by little, it's coming around, and I'm like I said, I'm hopeful, and I'm gonna keep fighting for that hope to my last for my kids and their kids, so that they have a chance to have something
Well,
better.
when our last episode, we talked about Stamp Act, right? And it was such a little thing that got this country into the revolution. And I think we're sitting on a powder keg here in the U.S. And there's I think COVID was God's way of saying, "Hey, wake up, America! Look what's going on." And especially when parents got to see what was going on in the classroom through their computer tubes, right? Or called tubes. I'm dating myself, but their Zoom videos and seeing what their kids had to go through. And so things got exposed, right? As you said, you're too busy to take off from work to go in and sit in your kid's classroom. Okay. So, and that's by design, I think, in some regard. So there's hope, and there's people like you, and me, and others that we all know, and your whole, Salt and Light group, for example, that are fighting a good fight, and we need to continue the fight. So this is episode 11, which is really our 12th, and we will continue to create these podcasts as we go through, and hopefully this is educational for everybody. And we'd be really interested to have you guys contact us and let us know what you think, because you can get me at mark.deluzio@gmail, and you can write a comment in our website, which is 1787solution.com. Go right in there and write a comment. And by the way, we all know 1787 is when we ratify the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So let's hear from you. We'd love to hear what you think about this subject, because it's a hot topic, and many may not agree. Many may think we're, as you said earlier, black helicopter people with with aluminum antennas around our heads at night. So, Christy, I think it was a good episode. Thanks for your input on this one. And we'll see you next time. So, Christy Tyrone from Prescott Valley, Arizona. Mark DeLuzio from Scottsdale, Arizona. We will see you next time. Thanks, Christy.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Constitution Solution, one podcast under God. You can find other episodes on our website at 1787solution.com, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're your hosts, Christy Tyrone and Mark DeLuzio. Until next time, may God bless you and may God bless America.